Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. I want to start off the top here with Alpha Investments here on their YouTube channel on the screen. Not something that I commonly discuss on the channel too much, but I do keep an eye on some other hobbies, but also specifically I have dabbled in Magic the Gathering over the years. It's not something I get a chance to play very often or something I pay too close attention to, but I am enjoying and have had some fun pertaining to what's going on with Magic the Gathering, the fan base, and Hasbro. And if you guys want to talk about drama, the sports card drama is a pittance compared to what's been going with them. And Rudy here at Alpha Investments has probably gotten as much mileage out of it as anybody. Because you can see here, this video is an hour ago, 6 hours ago, 1 day ago, a day ago, a day ago, 2 days ago, 2 days ago, 3 days ago. Like a lot of this is based on the exact same topic. Even right here to Dear Wizards of the Coast 8 days ago. So there's been like 12 videos here just in the last week or so pertaining to this topic. It's very entertaining. For what it is, if you ever get a chance to check it out and you have any interest in this whatsoever, I do recommend it because it is quite enjoyable. However, that said, it is a sports card channel predominantly, so we're going to get back to talking about that. So let us do just that very thing. So real quick, I want to shout out here Baubles and Ball Cards, who made a video a little bit ago, basically about half an hour ago pertaining to this, and included with the customary Judge Judy on the thumbnail. So bonus points, Baubles, well played. So it is going to be a very similar take to some of the stuff I'm going to talk about, although I'm going to focus on some different stuff pertaining to some of the posts. But conceptually, I think we wind up in and around the same place. So, but I figured I would make the video. And testament to kind of my commitment to the content gods is that realistically, I felt like there would be enough videos on this that it didn't really necessitate me making a standalone, aside from anything we're going to talk about on Thursday on the PSA Canada channel, as well as what I'm going to be talking about on Friday. Because what I'm going to say tonight is going to be very similar to what I'm going to say in those days too. And reality is I'm open to talking about it because it's pretty much there. It's out in the public. And it does play into a topic that I've talked about where I say a lot of folks over at collectors, and that pertains not just to Nat Turner, it pertains to a whole bunch of other folks. I don't know who the hell is in charge of their social medias from the perspective of a lot of companies of that size would have somebody who would at least vet some of the social media posts they're putting out there. But very clearly, everybody's just posting whatever the hell they want. I don't know if you guys remember that Instagram live where Ken Golden decided to light 86 Fleer packs on fire. I'm sure that's not something that would pass by a PR department if they had one. Or if they do, I have no idea what those folks are doing. They might be asleep at the wheel. But there's been a lot of posts like that and things of that sort that are a little controversial to say the least. This Nat Turner one isn't controversial in one way, but it basically kind of shut the door on one of the prevailing theories that folks have about it, even though not in the way that I would say that they probably wanted it to, because it doesn't actually resolve one element of it, but it does certainly shut the door on another. So let's get into it here. Like I mentioned, I'll include a link to the description to the Alpha Investment channel so you can check it out, as well as to Bobble's video here if you want to check that out as well. You can get both perspectives. So let me go to the heart of the matter here. This whole thing kind of started with Nat Turner posting that Michael Jordan triumvirate card that was in a PSA 10. Now, if you guys remember, and we've talked about this on the live stream, we kind of showed the card. We went to the post, the original post, as well as looking at the card itself. I had it zoomed in, so I'll see if I can find the screenshot here for you to share it. But it is one of those things where you do have to kind of be aware of it. And here, I think I've got it. So this is the zoomed in piece in question. So there you go. If you can see it on their page there. So you can see right there, that looks like, it actually looked like paper loss initially. But based on the update that we got after the fact, it makes a little bit more sense that it's actually on top of the card. And I'll get to that here in a moment. But I'll explain how, even in explaining this and giving a very plausible explanation for this portion of it, Nat Turner actually opened up a completely different can of worms. And in my opinion, a worse can of worms for himself. And it's a self-inflicted wound. This is an own goal, so to speak. But anyway, so this, looking at it on the surface, looks like, oh, that's a damaged card. You know what the heck's doing in the PSA 10 holder? Well, as it turns out, and this picture in particular describes it, here, looking at this, as it turns out, they cracked open the slab, and this piece turned out to be on top of it, and it's something they could peel off. Now, I'm going to get into these posts because this, okay, fine, that solves one mystery, and I've actually got the video as well for you in the other tab of someone removing it. The problem is who the someone is, and that's included here in these other Twitter posts. So, fine. From one perspective, you resolve part of the mystery, part of the question. Some folks had some questions about some of the other cards that he put on there, which is fine as well. But, we can quibble about whether you think something deserves a PSA 10 or an SGC 10 or whatever. I love that people conveniently forget that some of the other graders have overgraded cards. But PSA obviously is an 800-pound gorilla, so they're going to get the bulk of the conversation because there are more cards in their holders than anybody else's. There's going to be more screw-ups per capita. But regardless, inconsistency aside and, issues with grading aside, this card in and of itself, the explanation itself is fine and plausible from that perspective. However, Everything else is where you run into problems. And this is a social media problem for these guys. But at the same time, it basically proved the one element that people were asking. They say, does Nat Turner get favorable treatment? Now, the problem is when they're saying Nat Turner gets favorable treatment, they're talking about, oh, he just snaps his finger, the card can be torn in half, and he gets a 10. Well, I'll leave it to you guys to debate that piece on your own. But one thing we do know for sure is that Nat Turner does get favorable treatment when it comes to dealing with a situation. And he basically proved it right here in this Twitter post, because the next Twitter post after this says right here, after people pointed it out in pertaining to the Triumvirate card, I assumed as well that it was surface damage and would get the card regraded. So if I stop right there, that's fine. But the problem is what comes after that is that once the card was cracked out, the grader inspected that area and noticed it was material on top of the surface, not missing stock. Super interesting to see. Stop. Record scratch. Here's our problem. You, Nat Turner, CEO of Collectors, should not be able to see. It shouldn't be interesting to see because, and this is where I always kind of, basically said that the folks that were worried about the conflict of interest were skipping a step. If the question is there potential for Nat Turner in the position of CEO of Collectors to have conflict of interest? The answer was always yes. Anytime you have somebody in that position, there is always the potential and opportunity for conflict of interest. The problem is they leaped immediately to basically assuming that there was a conflict of interest with him grading. And I'll actually touch on the whole grading thing, being involved in the company portion of it. I'll talk about that at the tail end. I want to focus on this part first. But the point is that in and of itself, simply being the head of the company from that perspective, in this case, the parent company of the company, in and of itself does not indicate conflict of interest. It becomes in how your mechanisms are set up to either insulate you or to promote that type of behavior. In this case, this post basically negates that because what you flat out said is that you, Nat Turner, CEO of Collectors, were in the room. And the next post, goes even a step further than that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But you're in the room being able to observe this happening. So it means the grader is right there with their boss or their boss's boss's boss, however many levels you want to go to, basically standing there evaluating the proceedings. Well, that removes any attempt at impartiality that there might be from there. It doesn't allow them to go look at it on its own merits. It's a different story, by the way. If you have a mechanism in place where, yeah, you're submitting a card and you're submitting expedited whatever to get something resolved, but the grader gets a bunch of boxes from a bunch of different people at that level with different codes on them, sticker with a code on it that corresponds to an order, but doesn't tell the grader who this order belongs to. The problem is as soon as Nat Turner's sitting in the room handing you a slab and saying, hey, crack this open, tell me what's going on, well, we're done. You know exactly who that belongs to. You know what the situation is. Any attempt at impartiality is gone. And the next part is, basically also emphasizes this point. I actually took a video of the grader removing the peel. So the grader is actually removing the peel, which I can figure out how to post without audio. I will. And you can hear how surprised that I am with what the situation was. And Nat Turner on his Instagram does post that. So here is a PSA grader removing the piece for him. Now, on the one hand, it confirms that the card itself didn't have an issue with that specific piece that I showed you, which is fine. And, if you want to regrade the card from there, fine. Now, the other piece of this puzzle was that apparently it was a crossover from a BGS 9.5 originally, which then begs the question. So we'll talk to a couple of different things here. First of all, why on earth did two different grading companies get the grade wrong? Because when you've got this on top of it, and if you think about any cards like Finest, where there's a peel, let's say the corner of the card is peeling up, well then you wouldn't get a 10 on that. You would actually be downgraded because it would hurt the surface, so to speak. So in a lot of cases, if you're seeing that it's curling, you would probably be best served to remove it to allow you to evaluate the surface on the rest of the chromium without that in the way. So number one, if you want to talk about Nat Turner getting favorable treatment, well, that'd be your first argument. Like if you see something like that, you would downgrade it automatically. So why did two different third-party graders miss that? That's one question you can bring up. Second question that you want to bring up. Next, after that, then why is Nat Turner in the room being able to take a video of the grader doing it? Well, here's the thing. If you want to talk about favorable treatment, I don't care what you think about whether he can snap his fingers and get 10 grades just by being Nat Turner. That's your discussion to have. That's your problem to have. But it is undeniable that Nat Turner is one of the few people on Earth that can waltz in to the PSA company headquarters and be able to go over to the grading room, hand this to somebody, and be able to get it done on the spot. That is not what a normal rank and file collector can do, even if they have a card that's misgraded, even if they have a card with an issue, even if they have any other similar instance, they'd have to go through the quote-unquote normal process. Well, Nat Turner gets to walk in. which in and of itself is like, hey man, that's your prerogative, you do your thing. But at that point, then the conversation's over. You know, the prosecution rests. Yes, you do get favorable treatment, because whether you think he gets favorable grades or not, I don't care about that portion of it. You guys can have that debate separate from me. But obviously, favorable treatment is being able to walk it in yourself and being able to get a personal grader to take care of this for you. That is favorable treatment by definition, because nobody else can do that, regardless. So from that portion of it, prosecution, you know, like I said, prosecution rests. This part of the conversation is over. So does he get favorable treatment? 100%. Yep. It's right there. The video. The proof is in the video. The proof is in the video, and it's in the Twitter post. So there you go. Right there and right here. So done. We solved that mystery. Now, the question then becomes, you know, should executives from collectors, or should folks involved in the company be able to basically use the product that they have, you know, a certain amount of control over? That's where it gets into a little bit of murky water. Reason being that if they had mechanisms in place, like I mentioned, where it is truly randomized from the grader's perspective, then you could theoretically be able to operate and be able to do this. Now, if you want to take the tact where you say, okay, no, we should have a hard line. Anybody working at collectors, or specifically PSA in particular, or if not collectors as a whole, shouldn't be able to submit anything with it. Then I say, okay, fine. So let's put a policy in place. For the sake of argument, let's do that. So we put a policy in place saying we can't do this. Nat Turner, you can never grade a card with PSA again. Okay. So what's to stop Nat Turner's cousin from submitting a card? What's to stop Nat Turner's, you know, hobby buddy from submitting some cards that might happen to belong to Nat Turner? It's really easy to circumvent, is the point I'm trying to get across. Also, my question would be, how far do we extend the concern as far as the sphere of influence or potential influence? Is a bulk submitter who does a ton of business with PSA, let's say they're in good standing, let's say this is, you know, not a situation, but they're in good standing, they do a lot of business with PSA, they have a contract, and they're good to go. Should they be able to submit their own cards? Because, you know, presumably they would have a good relationship with folks at PSA. Is that sufficient? Is somebody closely related to folks related to it? Because remember, collectors is not just PSA. Collectors is also PCGS, which is the coin grading company. Does that mean the folks that have sports cards but also have some coins should never submit anything to PCGS? Does that mean the folks that are coin collectors who happen to have some cards also? Is that next as far as that piece is concerned? Are they not allowed to submit anything because they're under the collector's umbrella, but not actually working at PSA? Because they could know some folks in there. They might have some relationships or friends. So that's kind of a question. That's next. And then we go from there. You know, what level of separation is okay? If you're a big time dealer who does a lot of business with it, let's forget about third party. Let's forget about a third party. Let's forget about a bulk submitter. Let's just say you're a dealer who submits thousands of cards a month to PSA. Well, you're a pretty big business. People already think for years, going back many years, the theory has been that some of these big dealers get favorable grades anyway. So forget about Nat, forget about being an executive. They already think they get favorable grades now. So the question is, what kind of separation do you think you can put into it? That's a separate discussion in and of itself. Anyway, I could go in circles on this. Like I said, I debated whether I want to make a standalone video on it. You guys can decide if you're comfortable, where you kind of stand on this thing. So my conclusion to it is as follows. We've resolved the question about if he gets favorable treatment. He does. He was able to walk in a card, get it personally cracked out by a personal grader, who then took the piece off. Whether the card deserved a 10 or not, you guys can debate that. Whether his other cards deserve 10s or not, again, you guys can debate that. I'm really not too concerned about that. You guys can have that discussion on your own. But it's very clear he did get favorable treatment. And the debate about whether anyone involved in collectors should be able to submit their own cards is really kind of an open one. I don't think the answer to that one is super simple. I do think that Nat shouldn't have been able to do it this way. And certainly I think it was a mistake on his part to basically, you know, give himself up this way, because he basically just proved that you can't. So I'm curious kind of on your thoughts on this. So I'll leave it to you kind of to debate amongst yourselves. I'll try to follow up with any comments there to the best of my ability, but I think we're pretty settled on this. We'll definitely have more opportunity to talk about it on Thursday and on Friday. And I'd be curious to kind of get your thoughts and opinions on it, and we'll kind of go from there. But that the latest little hobby mystery has been kind of solved, and then Nat Turner took it upon himself to solve it for us. So there you go. I suppose that that deserves a thank you in that way, that at least it solved that portion of it. As far as implications to the rest of it, I've been in this hobby long enough. I don't think there's any big time implications on it long term, because the majority of collectors, and I've said this on a variety of different videos, the majority of collectors only really give a crap when it pertains to them. If Nat Turner doing this tanks, you know, PSA prices and a bunch of other stuff, then people will care. The majority of them will be like, okay, that's really unfortunate. He shouldn't do that. So I'm submitting these cards now. Can I have them this level or this level or this level? Thank you. Good day. it's going to be like that for a lot of folks, even the folks that know and watch and are familiar with it. So, and that's always been the way that the hobby operates. It's really is, how does this affect me is really the question that the majority of people would ask. So those are kind of my thoughts on this one. Leave your comments in the comments section. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. More videos coming forward. And then we'll also be doing the live stream on the channel on Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, where I'm sure we'll talk about this. We'll also talk about Fallout and, post-Expo. Some experiences and everything. I got to see the guys a fair bit during the show, but at the same time, everybody kind of went off in their own way and did their own thing. So probably we'll have some stories. I think that'll be kind of fun, and we'll be able to enjoy that. So if you got any thoughts on that, we'll definitely have a chance to talk about that some more. Anyway, that's it for me for now. Thanks very much. I'll catch you in the next one.